We need to deal with the root of this evil rather than the fruit of this evil. And we need to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Your vote isn't just affecting you. Your kids' kids are coming. They are going to have to deal with what we choose today.
Start praying to God for wisdom, praying to God for ways that people can start to open their eyes to really the truth that's taking place around them, because this is such a critical moment in history.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Revelation in the News. I'm your host, Zach Drew.
I'm Sasha Vols.
And I'm Taylor Schlobaum.
You know, yesterday, Sasha and I had an opportunity to sit down with a few hours with our friend, I consider him our friend now, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis. And he had some shocking things to say, and it's going to kind of springboard us into what we want to talk about today. Just so you know, Lieutenant Colonel, he has been a senior strategist now. He's retired from the Army, but he's a senior strategist for over 14 years at the Pentagon, and he actually served as Inspector General at the Pentagon for a number of years after the military. And we were talking yesterday, and the topic that is on all of our brains, obviously, is the elections, is politics, what in the world is going on. And he was disgusted with one of the facts that he had conservative friends or even Christian friends that were saying, no, I am not going to vote at all. And he said it is a moral obligation, and he was in a state of frustration about this.
He was, and it really comes down to the fact that people are saying that they don't want to vote, they're not sure, and so since they don't align perfectly 100% morally with the right candidate or another candidate, that they don't want to put their vote anywhere. But the thing is, we're not trying to place the Pope into power. We're not trying to place a minister into power. We're trying to place a president into power. And so that's right where we're at right now. And so we're seeing all of these people asking, who should I vote for? I don't know if I want to or not. But it's not a question of if I should or not. It's who do we vote for?
And it's a matter of principle. It's a matter of principle. And I was on the phone this week with our pastor, Pastor Jim, and we really kind of call it a divine moment. Just things started to download between him and I, and from the Lord, and we came up with this thing, and it's called the 3 Ps. It's the 3 Ps, and it's personality, party, and principle. Personality, party, and principle. You see, whenever you're voting in November, you do not want to vote for personality. You shouldn't even be voting for party. The most important thing is to vote principle. And you see the media today, they've made it all about personality, you know, Trump's personality or Hillary's personality. And you have Christians who are saying, well, you know, that are conservatives that have been typically Republican, well, I'm just going to vote Republican or Democrat, and I'm not going to sway or go anywhere. I'm voting just Democrat. This is not about party. This is about country. It's voting for the survival of this country. It's not about personality. It's not about party. It's about principle. And one of the most important things to keep in mind in November is abortion, is life. That's what it is. I can't think in this book, from Genesis to Revelation, a more important topic, a more important principle, a pillar, a principle within the Word than life.
Absolutely. And when we're looking at it as a Christian, you have to say, what does it come down to? There's all these other just areas in voting where we're like looking at the different areas of it. But what it comes down to is who's going to stand up for life. And right now in this election, we're seeing a Republican Party or a Republican candidate stand up for life more than really any other candidate has been in the history of voting. We're seeing that this man is standing out there saying, I want to go pro-life. I want people to be able to be born in this country without having to be sacrificed before they even get here.
Exactly. And and that's the issue. That's the issue. You know, it's not that we are so, excuse me, it's not that we are so pro-Donald Trump, because he does have a lot of rough edges, and he says a lot of things that I wish he wouldn't. It's not about a man. It's not about a party. It's about principle. And the most important principle is abortion. It's life. And right now, we're in a season, once again, where Rabbi Jonathan Cahn said we're entering into a season where it's the abolition of gray. Gray is disappearing, and you're either on one side or the other. And Donald Trump has been saying, listen, whenever I get in office, I'm going to go so far to attempt to repeal the 1973 Supreme Court decision called Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion throughout the United States. So you have one minute saying, I want to end abortion, and then you have the other candidate saying, listen, I don't want to end abortion. I actually want to put abortion on steroids. Coming from her mouth, starting in January, she has said it multiple times, including the Democratic National Convention, where she wants to do something referring to repealing the Hyde Amendment. Repealing the Hyde Amendment. Now, what's the Hyde Amendment? Well, about 3 or 4 years after Roe v. Wade in 1973 was put into effect, they were just throwing out federal money, and they were paying for abortions to the tune of about $300,000 every year that just the government was supplying. And this man, I believe his name was Henry Hyde, William Henry Hyde, came upon the scene and he said, listen, I'm going to say that I don't think that it's constitutional for the federal government to be paying for abortions. And he said, there's only 3 times I believe that the federal government should be paying for abortions. And it was whenever, someone would get pregnant because of incest or for example, the mother's life was at stake. And there was a couple other different issues. And basically it passed. And it barred the federal government from just throwing money upon mounds of money on abortion. And then it actually ended up going down to about only 3,000 abortions a year that the federal government was paying for. Well, she's saying, I'm going to reverse the Hyde Amendment so that every single dollar that you as an American make, there's a certain part of that dollar that's going to be taxed that's going to go to fund abortion. So you have one person that's saying, I am so anti-abortion, and one person that says, I am pro-abortion. Now, I want to go out on one more limb here, because there are a lot of important issues that, like strong borders and how we decide to defeat ISIS and other military, things. But the most important thing, like I said, is abortion. And if the Democratic Party was actually anti-abortion, even though I don't agree with them on so many other, platforms, I'd vote Democrat. I honestly would, because there's not a more important issue than life.
Well, if you look at it, it's just, we've gotten to the point where, like you were talking about, party versus personality. And when we're looking at the media and everything that they're feeding us, we're saying, oh, well, I want to vote on this, or I want to vote for this personality, or I want to vote for, because I'm this party. But at the end of the day, are you actually even looking at the candidate? Are you looking at what they stand for? Are you looking at what issues are they bringing to the table and what solutions are they bringing with it? And so that's really the key to this election, is making sure you look into what does your candidate, wherever you're putting your vote, wherever you're thinking about putting your vote, where does that candidate stand? Where does that candidate stand for life? Where do they stand with the borders? Where do they stand with the guns? We need to figure out where we stand personally first, and then you put your vote where that candidate stands with you at.
Amen. So we've talked about, abortion and these other important issues. And one of the things, like I just want to say this one more time, that if the Democratic Party, it's not about party or personality. Even if the Democratic Party was saying, listen, we're going to overturn Roe versus Wade, and the Republican Party was saying, no, we're actually for abortion, I would vote Democrat. Because like I said, there's not a more important issue. It's not about party. It's not about personality. It's about principle. It's about principle. But there is obviously some major, other issues like the border, like strong borders. And there's an article here today, and it says 80%, this is from Breitbart News, 80% of the people captured at the border are set free in the U.S., says a Border Patrol agent. It says within this article, Border Patrol agent Hector Garza, acting in his role as president of the National Border Patrol Council, appeared on Fox News Channel recently to discuss border security and the need for building a wall. And he said 8 out of 10 people that are caught entering our country illegally are not deported and are allowed to stay in the United States, Garza explained. Unfortunately for Border Patrol agents, we are trying to do our jobs as best we can with the very limited resources we have. Now, this is the shocking part. This is the part that just captured my attention. Border Patrol agent Hector Garza said this: "It's through executive orders, okay, from the President of the United States. It's through executive orders that most of the people that we apprehend end up getting released into the country."
Wow.
Into the country.
The problem with this also is they're frustrated. There's a problem. They see it. Okay. But look at this. He goes on to say we do not have enough vehicles for our agents to patrol us. We do not get the manpower that we need, including communications equipment, tower cameras, and weapons. We have to have a proper respect for our borders and our national security, and a president who doesn't have that respect, things like this are going to go overlooked all the time. It's going to get worse and worse. It's another reason why this election is so important, because they will not get the stuff they need unless there's a proper respect for national security.
Exactly. And like he was saying, that there's a list of issues.
Yeah.
We don't have the proper, people, the proper vehicles. But when it comes, and that's one of the issues. But he's basically saying, even if we had that stuff through executive orders, we still have to let go.
Wow.
8 out of 10 people that cross our borders.
Wow. Well, I have an article right here that says U.S. spends another $10 million to register new immigrant voters. It says months after the Obama administration spent $19 million to register new immigrant voters that will likely support Democrats in November, it's dedicating an additional $10 million in a final push as the presidential election approaches. And it says clearly, the ultimate goal is qualifying as many immigrants as possible to vote, since they tend to cast ballots for Democrats. But there it is. At the end of it, why are they doing this? Because they know if they give them that ability, they will receive the vote.
Exactly. That's what we need to understand, because it's not about good Hispanic people coming to America, becoming a part of the American dream, paying taxes, becoming a citizen, and taking part in what we've all been able to take part in, which is the American dream. It's not about that. And they even throw such a negative light on the Republicans and make us seem like we're awful, horrible people because we don't want this to happen. But it's not about that with the Democrats. It's about them remaining in power. It gives them more and more power. Because here's the study right here. It says from the Washington Examiner, it says study finds more immigrants equals more Democrats and more losses for the GOP. It says Republicans are famously divided on immigration reform, but Democrats pretty much unanimously support it. And there's a reason for that. In stark partisan political terms, continuing the high level of immigration of recent decades, and certainly increasing immigration, has envisioned by many reformers, will result in more Democrats winning more elections in coming years. So I don't view it, the Democrats, I don't view Obama giving $10 more million to register new immigrant voters because he wants them to take part in the American dream. They understand through highly, really, they're incredible studies that show that the more immigrants in America, typically they vote Democratic. So it's really all about remaining in power.
Well, and just to add to this equation of control and power, we have another article here that says paperless voting could fuel rigged election claims. It says here, voters in 4 competitive states will cast ballots in November on electronic machines that leave no paper trail, a lapse that threatens to sow distrust about a presidential election in which supporters of both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have raised fears about hackers tampering with the outcome.
But see, that's the thing right here. Paperless voting, and then we're also pushing for ID. Like, we don't have to have an ID to go and vote. So you're basically saying paperless voting, and then you don't even have to show an identification to get in to vote. So how many times can you vote? Really, for this election, can you walk in as many times as you want? Can you vote for whoever? Does your vote actually matter if they're not even going to count it correctly? Because there's nothing physical to even back up your vote.
That's right.
That's a scary thought, to think, really, this whole election can be hijacked and taken and put wherever it needs to be.
That's right. And we've got a lot more news to cover, so we're going to keep moving on. Another interesting thing that came up in the news again this week is that the next president of the United States, whether you don't like Donald Trump or not, and people often say, listen, we have no idea what he's going to do in office. Well, we know exactly what Hillary Clinton is going to do. And the Supreme Court decision, right now it's 4-4. It's 4 conservative versus 4 liberals. And if we elect Hillary Clinton and she nominates a liberal Supreme Court justice, we can kiss religious freedom goodbye.
And I got an article here, and boy, did we come close to that. It says, Hobby Lobby founder David Green, we're one judge away from losing religious liberty in America. He goes on to say, he wrote about his business's Supreme Court victory over the Obamacare mandate. The employer-provided health insurance plans must provide coverage for potentially life-terminating contraceptive drugs. Unlike the 16 contraceptives the Hobby Lobby plan covered, the government mandated 4 more that had the potential to take effect after conception, and they faced a $1.3 million fine each day they did not comply with the mandate. And he says right here by himself, he says, this is founder David Green, fortunately, the Supreme Court issued a 5-4 ruling in favor of Hobby Lobby in 2014. But it's frightening to think that we, and all Americans, were just one judge away from losing our religious freedom. This is making the election, the upcoming election, even more prominent, even more important and critical, because if we're just right now, just one Supreme Justice away. Imagine, as Zach has said before many times, this next election, the next president could possibly pick 3-4 other justices that could remain until who knows how long. I mean,
that's right, because the next president can only stay in office for 4 to 8 years, but the Supreme Court justices, they sit for life. They sit for life. And people don't understand how much power these Supreme Court justices have. I mean, they have the same type of power as presidents in other countries have. I mean, this is such a vital, vital thing. Well, Franklin Graham has been in the news this week, and it's from CSN News, and commenting on how Christians over the centuries have provided assistance, food, shelter, training, and health care to the poor. Evangelist Franklin Graham said he agreed with Catholic Bill Donahue that socialists and atheists are scared to death of the church. Socialists and atheists are scared to death of the church. He says, socialists and atheists are scared to death of the church, said Reverend Graham. They don't want anyone except the government responsible for caring for the poor.
Wow.
Think about that. They don't want anyone except the government responsible for caring for the poor. He says, here in this country, the poor were cared for by the churches for over 200 years. The Catholics, Presbyterians, Methodists, Baptists, and several, all had great hospitals to take care for the sick. If the Democratic socialists, if the Democratic socialists have their way, we will lose the quality of our health care, and it will be so expensive that in many cases the poor will have nowhere to go. He continued, socialists have a problem with those in the business of helping others, especially in Jesus' name. So that was the big statement. They don't want anyone except the government responsible for caring for the poor. You see, America, we have created systems. We've created systems that were initially good systems if they were used the right way. The welfare system, a great system if it was used the right way. The AFDC, Aid to Families with Dependent Children, good system if it was used the right way. But we have had people come in and twist and pervert it. And I'm telling you right now that slavery in America still does exist. It might not be reserved to one particular color or race anymore, but it's primarily in the ghettos of American cities.
And like you said,
I want to finish this point really quickly. I want to illustrate this really for a moment. The AFDC, Aid to Families with Dependent Children. Basically, what happens is the government gives you more and more money if you're not married. So that destroys the family unit, and it gives you, the more children you have, the more money they give you, okay? Aid to Families with Dependent Children. And also, if you get married, the money goes away. Or if you go and get a job, the money goes away. But if you don't get married, there's an incentive not to get married. There's an incentive not to go and get a job. And there is an incentive to have more children so that they can give you more money. But the moment you get married, or the moment you go out and try to supply food or more money for your kids in your house, the welfare, the government money leaves. And so it's enslaving people to the government. They're becoming completely dependent on the government. And if they want life to continue as they know it, they have to vote Democratic, because they believe that if they would elect a Republican president, that those benefits would go away. No, they wouldn't completely go away, but the systems would go back to how they need to be going back. So slavery still does exist. We are still dependent on somebody. But instead of the slave owners living in plantations in the South, now they have seats in Washington. Now they have seats in Washington, and people are still completely dependent on them. See, this is what socialism looks like. This is socialism at its finest. These programs are socialism at its finest. You know, I have a picture that I'm going to have you put up in just a second, because if you look at Venezuela, socialism doesn't work for anybody, but those at the very tip top. Yeah. It's kind of like the prosperity gospel. It only works for those who preach it. Okay? While everybody else is getting poorer, the man who preaches it is getting richer and richer. That's kind of how socialism works. They create all of these policies through a beautiful pitch to make it sound wonderful and rosy. And once it's instilled, it will diminish America while giving the 1% of the 1% more and more power. Throw up that picture that I found. It says your city on socialism, your hospital on socialism. Hey, but your politician on socialism. Wow. I believe this is an incredible meme on the internet that displays what socialism looks like.
And like you said before, Zach, there's a socialist movement. This is happening. It's trying to be happening hidden, trying to hide this whole package. But you look at it, who's the threat now? Who is the threat? And like Zach has said before, American evangelists. We're now labeled the threat to this movement, to security. They're afraid that we're going to get in the way of this plan. And it's just, as you read more and you get more involved, everything's flipped upside down.
That's right. You know, like there are certain things that make America great, and you can see them being systematically and deliberately taken away. What makes the country great? Natural resources. We've either closed the coal mines or sold them to China. What makes the country great? Again, natural resources, but yet we have vetoed the Keystone Pipeline, and we rely on Saudi Arabia for our oil. What makes a country great? A strong military and strong borders. Well, we've disarmed most of our nukes, and we've allowed free and open borders. You know, and what makes a country great? Well, in our country, with our democracy, it is morality and religion. Yeah. Quoted by John Adams, a government unbridled by morality and religion is going to absolutely crumble. So that's why there is a full front attack on Christianity, because they're trying to get rid of morality and religion, because there is only one thing that stands in the way of a one world order, and that is a strong America.
Right. Well, talking about the diminishing of America, I have an article right here that says worse than the Depression. 1 in 6 working age males have no job under Obama. The numbers are in, and after 7 years of Obama, the economic climate in America is worse than the Depression.
Yes.
1 in 6 working age males in America have no job. And it goes on to say, Barack Obama is the first president on record to not see a single year of a 3% GDP growth. The latest quarterly GDP rate was a 1.1%. And looking at it right now, it's like we're looking at the diminishing of morals. We're looking at the diminishing of family in America. And now we're seeing 1 in 6 working age males. That's 1 in 6 males. If you look around that are working age, that are not working, completely living off the government, and realistically, if you have a family, if you have children, where is that money coming from? Is it coming from the working class Americans paying that paycheck for you that isn't working? And now that you have children, who's paying for theirs? Who's paying for their ways to go to school? Who's paying for their lunch? Who's paying for their food and the necessities of the home?
The government.
At the end of the day, but where does that money come from? It comes from us.
Yes, exactly.
And so we have to look at it and say, Let's get the morale back in America. At the end of the day, yes, it is going to be hard to start pushing yourself back into the workforce. Yes, it is hard to get off government money, especially when they're paying you to basically do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, when you can say, I went to work today, I worked for everything I own. I worked hard and I know what I work for. And now I have children that I'm taking care of, and this money is coming from working, and now I can see the flourishment of it. It's an amazing feeling. And so that's really where America has to get back to is, yes, it's easy to live off the government. It's so simple because there's so many programs, and they want to give you all this money, and it's so easy. But at the end of it, for yourself, for the sake of your children, what are you teaching them? You have, and I'm not being harsh about this because I come from an area that literally everybody lives like that. That's how we all lived. But at the end of it, coming out of it and realizing, wow, like I work and I work really hard and I'm able to pay my own bills. I'm able to pay for my own stuff. Like it's an amazing feeling at the end of the day. And that's where it's so important to get out of that mindset because the government and the society that we live in and the media that we watch, they all program us to believe that this is the way to live, but it's not. And we have to look back and get back to biblical principles. You work for what you eat. And so that's just at the end of the day, my thought for the day is make sure that you push yourself, push forward and get out of this system, get out of this mindset, because at the end of the day, we become slaves to the government if we don't get out of their box.
And we can look at Venezuela and see the end result of socialism. And you see the Democratic Party is not what it used to be. And if you look at the things that they try to push, and you study socialism, that is the type of things that is actually taking place, and there is socialism taking place behind the scenes. And the result is this, worse than the Depression. Like you said, 1 in 6 working age males has no job under Obama. And Hillary Clinton is just going to continue that. We need to understand that. And we're going to end with just simply saying this, that Christians, we need to be praying. We need to be praying for our country. We need to be praying for our leaders. And we need to be praying that we don't get what we do deserve.
That's right.
Okay? Because we do deserve one candidate over another. Pray. It's time to pray. This has been Revelation in the News, and we'll see you next week.